So we're in the United States history book, and we're going into chapter 30, section 3 on Donald Trump's administration. And as here you can see some of the pictures of Donald Trump and his family here onto when he was younger. And here is his Vice President Pence here. Down here in the corner you see, I vote pro-life. So I'm going to talk about that just a little bit here because, you know, when I go to vote, I do vote for pro-life. If there's a candidate that is not pro-life, I know that they're not going to really line up with any of the other fundamental values that I have. So I know in my history in dealing with women in jail and women in trouble, women in the pregnancy centers and such, you know, that how important it is that they do not have these abortions, because abortion not only kills the baby, but kills the mother spiritually. So I've seen so many deal with, after having abortion, their lives just falling apart, and they're thinking that they have no spiritual way to get to God, you know. And so it's so important of the Lord Jesus Christ giving him the gospel at this time. So I just wanted to say, you know, when I vote, I am very strong voting for pro-life candidates. So if, you know, in either party, if they're not pro-life, I tend to avoid them, and a feeling that, okay, a foundation that's of a country that's built, you know, on abortion, or a party that's built on abortion is built on blood. And in that way, what good can come from it? You know, it's only going to fall apart. So a country built, you know, on the philosophies that are against the Bible is not going to stand. So how important it is in politics that we vote for pro-life candidates and those that are standing up for righteousness. And that is so important. So I wanted to stop there and say, because we've gone through a lot of different presidents and a lot of different ideas and fundamentals that they believed in, but it comes down to it, what is important? And it's important is the Lord Jesus Christ in our lives, right? And so when we look towards politics, we bring Jesus, our foundation, the love of our life, into our politics. And that's what I do. So anyway, I wanted to stop there because I vote pro-life, and we'll see how God changed President Trump's heart, you know, to that point where he looked at the foundation of Christianity, very important in the United States of America. And that's what we should do too. So my little talk there, but let's go on. Let's start into the chapter. The election of 2016. Americans were divided leading up to the election of 2016. The Democratic Party had become increasingly concerned with identity politics, which is the idea that a person's race, sex, sexual orientation form the most important parts of their humanity, and that politics should reflect that belief. The Republicans believed that their politicians had been too compromising with the increasingly radical left, and they needed a political outsider who would not back down or compromise with the Democrats. So the mentalities were very clear in the two parties' nominees for president, as we see here, as for all these candidates, and we come up with the candidates now with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. So let's find out more here. Candidates. The Democrat Party nominated former First Lady, Secretary of State from Arkansas, Hillary Clinton, with potential of being the first female president, right? So the Republican Party nominated real estate businessman and reality television star Donald Trump from New York, whose determination and bombastic manner gave Republicans the fight they thought they needed. As a businessman, Trump stated that he would take the brand of the United States and make it great again. Trump's past had some misgivings, though. He had a history of supporting both abortion and homosexual marriage and had occasional vulgar speech, but he had changed these. But some were persuaded by Trump's choice for his running mate, Indiana conservative Governor Mike Pence. Governor Mike Pence did not have the background that Donald Trump had. So when you think of Donald Trump's background, when I was, thinking of who I was going to vote for at this time, and I thought, well, there's some of the things, in the past, and then I looked into his past and I saw that recently, in his recent past, he had come to the testimony with Focus on the Family, Dobson's Focus on the Family, that Dobson had got together with him and actually presented him the gospel in such a way that Donald Trump had repented and actually prayed to receive Jesus as a Savior. So I focused right there and said, and everybody says, well, who knows? You're going to know them by their fruit and all this and everything. But that made a shocking difference for me. When I saw, okay, so he's changed. He's changed his thoughts on a lot of things. And the main thought was his thought on abortion, that now he had changed, knowing that abortion was wrong. And so I thought, well, God is dealing with his heart. And so he's a new Christian. So praying for a new Christian that may be leading our nation, God may use him abundantly, God always loves to use new Christians. So anybody that's a new Christian and they're on fire, so maybe God will set him on fire with the Lord. And that's what I was praying. And so in the midst of all this, we have a businessman, not a politician. He's not a politician, he's a businessman. And then we have the Democratic Party candidate of Hillary Clinton being basically, involved in politics all of her life as being the wife of Bill Clinton. We know that as a president of the United States, one of the presidents of the United States. So we have two very different candidates. Strong opinions on the candidates. For many, the candidates were the biggest issue of the campaign. Hillary Clinton was unpopular in her own party because she was viewed as a corrupt politician. She had backgrounds of different corrupt scandals, even going way back to being the wife of the governor of Arkansas. So people looked at her a little bit, let's see. And the Republicans despised her even more because of her role in the Benghazi investigation. As if we'll look back we looked at the Benghazi investigation under Obama, in which basically the embassy in Benghazi and in Libya was being attacked, and she was Secretary of State, and she had not responded in time. And looking into it, it doesn't look too good as for what had happened. But anyway, Trump had an unconventional political style in discussing illegal immigration, and Clinton and the negative press labeled him as a racist, and that he would be a tyrant. And to the left, he seemed like a racist tyrant, and they tried to pin him as that because he said, "I will build a great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall." And so that statement they took and said, "Oh, he must be racist." So, but basically, building the wall was a thing that they already had thought about under putting up a fence, under the last administration before Obama. And I was thinking, under Bush, I had to think for a second, under George W. Bush's administration, I was thinking which one had the fence. Actually, it was under Bush. And so under Bush, they had already put forth building a fence here. And now Donald Trump says, I'm going to build a wall. Supreme Court Justice dies. So after the death of Supreme Court Justice Anton Scalia, the Republican Senate insisted the next president choose the new justice. So the Supreme Court became a most prevalent issue. One of the most important issues: who's going to be replaced on the Supreme Court? Who will be the replacement, I should say. And Clinton promised to appoint a pro-abortion progressive justice, while Trump said he would appoint a pro-life justice. So this became a major issue, in our votes for president. This convinced many to vote for Trump. Even if they didn't like the man himself, they knew that he would appoint, a pro-life judge. And so indeed he did. And you see here, he's going to actually end up appointing 3 pro-life judges. Isn't that amazing? In a short time, that he would actually now be have the power there to put 3 new Supreme Court justices, not just 1, that were pro-life. Election day. Oh dear, here we come with election day. The media predicted that Hillary Clinton, would win. All of the polls said, there's no deal, you're going to win for sure. 99% you're going to win, they were very high that she would win. So Clinton even decided to not even visit some of the swing states. She said, I don't need to visit those states. She believed that she had the vote and liberal states would cover her and she didn't need to go to the swing states. By these swing states proved to be very crucial. By the end of the night, Trump had won the popular vote by almost 3 million votes. That's quite a large amount of votes. And Donald Trump, by winning in the blue-collar swing states, became the 45th president of the United States. Shocking all of the polls, right? And so here we have some shocking, Donald Trump is president here. And here we have, the key states. I have to say something happened, with Ohio. So Ohio became a very important state for Donald Trump. And it was a swing state, and the race was so tight. And because the Amish, the Amish community had never voted before. And so they knew, if Clinton had become president, it would affect them in major ways. So they stood up to vote, and they all went in and signed up to vote. Like a few thousands of them went in to vote for Donald Trump. And they lined up to go in and vote. And guess what? Ohio, the Republican election, Donald Trump won in the state of Ohio because of their votes. Isn't that pretty spectacular? That it could swing in that direction in a whole state because of certain people who decided to vote, especially the Amish, which were very conservative. So conservative. So, makes me smile a bit. Donald Trump, 45th president. At the age of 70 and worth $4 billion, he was a billionaire, Trump became the oldest and wealthiest man ever elected to be president. Trump identified himself as the champion of the people. He sought support from the working class in America during his campaign and on into his presidency. He argued that the major political parties and the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. had ignored the needs of average Americans. So, and here he is. He's actually taken the oath. And Melania, his wife, there too, back when he took the oath as president. Beautiful first lady. Domestic policy now. Social conservatism. So Trump surrounded himself with reliable conservatives. Trump's action on several key issues earned him praise by leading conservatives. He appointed the originalist judges and instituted a policy that stopped the flow of United States funds to international organizations that offered abortion services. So he stopped those government agencies that were paying for abortion. That was amazing, and went back to the original Constitution, not a Constitution that changed with the culture. but original Constitution. So Trump promoted private schools and homeschooling and laws against drugs. Although Trump did not stand against homosexual marriage per se, he did support objections to it and for nonprofits and businesses to hold conscious objection to it. So he was not, as for that Hobby Lobby standing, he stood behind Hobby Lobby. So Trump rescinded or canceled one of Obama's executive orders which allowed male students to use a women's bathroom and locker room. What a dumb executive order. Anybody would rescind that. That, men could use women's bathrooms, and locker rooms in high schools and stuff. Who would even think of that? Anyway, he tried to have Obamacare repealed and replaced, but it did survive due to some Republicans in the Senate that did side with Obamacare. Obamacare was that health care, national health care. So we have basically a Trump supporting the conservative party, social conservatism. Immigration now. Trump immediately began working to solve America's immigration crisis with his promised wall by enforcing the Secure Fence Act of 2006 under Bush. Here it is, Secure Fence Act of 2006 under Bush. Earlier I tried to think of which act that was, but it was under Bush, the Bush administration. And at that time, even the Democrats supported it. They had no argument about it. But suddenly, when Donald Trump stands up to build a wall, they're all against him. No, anyway, the primary concern was illegal aliens. Americans were worried about a deluge, a flood of refugees coming in from the Middle East that had been relocating across the world since the Arab Spring. So remember the Arab Spring is when the Arabs were fighting against their dictators, and then a lot of them had become refugees, and now they had a lot of Arab refugees coming in through the Mexican border, right? So Trump issued an executive order halting immigration of refugees from countries that were considered national security threats. Most of these countries were Muslim countries, and Trump had promoted the order to prevent Islamic terrorism. And critics of Trump portrayed him as a Muslim ban, even though it did not affect most Muslim countries. So after several court challenges, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Trump versus Hawaii, that the president was within his authority to restrict foreign nationals from entering the country. So President Trump travel ban, basically from immigration coming in from these countries, which were considered terrorist countries: Libya, Sudan, Yemen, Somalia, Syria, Iran. There were a lot of refugees coming in from those countries, and they were Muslim countries, coming in, and all of these countries harbored, terrorists. And so a country that harbored terrorists, he was not going to allow them to come in unless they went through the proper channels of coming in as immigrants, right? So people put him down and said he had a Muslim ban. But look he let people from Saudi Arabia come in. Yeah, and people from Iraq coming in. So not only, not all of the Arab nations did he put a ban on, but those that were involved in terrorism, which really, for our security, he was doing it for American people's security and terrorism coming in, right? Because that's how they had come in before. The Supreme Court. So Trump quickly moved to nominate a candidate to the Supreme Court to fill an open seat. And so he nominated Neil Gorsuch. There's a picture of Neil Gorsuch. He was narrowly confirmed because most of the Democrats believed that the seat was stolen from Obama's nominee. They thought, really, Obama should have been able to nominate him. Well, so they narrowly let him in after the Congress discussed this a lot. Then in 2018, another seat opened, and Trump nominated Brett Kavanaugh. And because a woman made claims of sexual assault against the Judge Kavanaugh that was from over 30 years prior, the Democrats treated him as if he were already guilty. You know, their tactics were condemned by Republicans as a smear campaign. They were trying to smear, you know, his testimony, or discredit, false accusation to discredit him, and betrayal of the principle of presumption of innocence until proven guilty. So they were saying he's guilty, although it's come to find out that it was a smear campaign against him. Justice Kavanaugh was confirmed on October 2018 by a vote of 50 to 48, one of the closest margins ever for a Supreme Court confirmation. So here we're going to have the three judges that Trump would appoint, which is, all of them, standing up for pro-life against abortion. The economy. So between 2016 and Trump's inauguration, the economy came to improve from the Great Recession. Remember the Great Recession? Actually, through the end of Bush and all the way through Obama, the housing bubble and everything. Well, in 2016, it started to improve quite a bit. To encourage this growth, the president began eliminating regulations and assigned one of the largest tax cuts in U.S. history. Hit a tax cut. By the end of Trump's first year, the economy began to recover from the housing bubble that they had for nearly 10 years. But the national debt was still extremely high following the high spending of the Obama administration. The Democrats criticized Trump for cutting taxes when the government was not able to pay all of his expenses, but guess what? They were unwilling to compromise on a bill to cut spending. Again, he says, okay, well, we'll cut spending then, and they're like, no, we're not cutting spending, but he was going to cut taxes. So they were very critical of everything that he did. But anyway, Trump encouraged deregulation of industries. He also began to suggest that the social media should be treated as a utility that could be regulated to prevent censorship. So what he was saying, yes, it happened at that time that the media was censoring a lot of those that were conservative and of the Republican Party, and they were censoring him. So he wanted to prevent this censorship to happen on the media. And he still stands up against fake media that stood up, and brought in fake accusations. So he was very much, media didn't really like Trump, especially the liberal media, on television and those that were persuading on different, internet, I should say, those things. Progressives complained that to do so would violate the right of private business and to behave as they please. We still have this ongoing thing with the media, don't we? Presenting different viewpoints, very biased viewpoints. So, the 116th Congress. So, fierce division over the presidency of Donald Trump ensured that the 2018 congressional elections would be a referendum on the president. So, Trump, of course, remained the foremost issue, you can imagine. And the Democrats did gain enough seats to gain control of the House of Representatives, including Deborah A. Haaland, picture there, a member of the Pueblo Nation from New Mexico, and Janice Davids, a member of the Ho-Hunk Nation from Kansas, two Native Americans. First Native American to Congress was Janice Davids. So the Democrats failed to take the Senate, with the Republicans gaining the seats there. So the Republican had control of the Senate, and we know as the Democrats were taking control of the House of Representatives. Now Congress was divided, making it much harder for the president. Impeachment. In August 2019, the president was accused of using his office to persuade a foreign power to help him discredit a political rival. Well, in December of 2019, the House of Representatives formally impeached Trump on 2 charges, making him the 3rd president to be impeached. So basically saying, oh, he was persuading a foreign power to stand up to a political rival. So on January 2020, the Senate held a trial on the impeachment case and then voted to acquit Trump on both charges in early February. So he was acquitted. So he wasn't, he was impeached by the impeached charge was there, but he was not impeached and taken off. And he was acquitted, So he's basically saying he did not collude with a foreign power. Foreign policy, America first. That was Trump's policy. Trump campaigned on the America First foreign policy in contrast to the globalist approach of Obama. You know what? I am definitely, not a globalist, because you think when we give our sovereignty over to a global network, whether it be the United Nations or where, we're going to end up giving it up to many of those powers are, as you say, sovereignty to them. They're basically countries that are communistic and countries that do not have a firm foundation, in Christianity. So basically looking at globalist, when you think of globalist, I think, oh, there's going to be a globalist coming on the scene that's going to be the Antichrist, one world power and all this. And it's happening, isn't it? So Trump campaigned on America first. He's not a globalist at all. So that made me smile. So he removed the United States from international agreements that he believed benefited other countries, instead at the expense of the United States. So he was a businessman, and he saw if, it was not benefiting the United States and was just benefiting the other countries at our expense, he would do away with them. So the other countries are looking like, oh my goodness, what do we have here? And if they were being benefited at the expense of the United States. So he pulled America out of trade and environmental agreements that placed the United States under burdensome obligations such as the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Paris Agreement. So when he saw, okay, these are not, for American first, not for Americans, then we're going to pull them out of those agreements. And he did. So Trump sought to either replace or withdraw from NAFTA. NAFTA, of course, had to do with Canada and Mexico, that whole agreement. So the Canadian government initially hesitated to negotiate, but Trump used tariffs to pressure Canada, and they listened. And ultimately, the 3 nations, Canada, Mexico, and the United States, replaced NAFTA. They replaced it with United States-Mexico Canada Agreement, USMCA. So he replaced this and put forth in a business sense the way we should relate to countries, our neighbors. So again, it was Make America Great by Making America First. He was concerned with Americans first. Hire American. You can see the pictures here. NATO and tariffs. Well, Trump remained committed to NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and that was mainly for a lot of the countries in Europe, that we had got together, but he criticized some of the allies. They were all allies together, but he criticized some allies like Germany because for not paying their promised share of NATO budget. Business again. So he looks and says, hey, you guys, we're all in NATO. You all need to pay. You all have the same vote. We all need to pay the same, You need to chip in here. So he said, here, United States is paying all this and you're only paying this little bit. You need to start paying as much, as we are. You need to pay your share. So of course, Germany and the other countries are looking on like, oh, we have now a businessman that's heading the country, of the United States. He also favored protective tariffs, believing that absolute free trade on Americans' part allowed other countries to take advantage of the United States. So he said, yes, well, as for buying, we need to protect the American businessmen, right? And so he favored protective tariffs to effect, so we wouldn't get a lot of, cheap things coming in from different countries, India or China or wherever they were coming and overcoming the American businessman, the American merchant. he was again protecting Americans. Critics said that tariffs would damage foreign trade relations, particularly with China, Canada, and the European Union. Although the ultimate effect on tariffs was not yet clear, some observed tariffs as convincing Canada to agree on the USMCA, and persuading China now was pressured to have peace in North Korea. Because basically, saying, okay, China was saying, well, we need to have good relationships because of our economy. So we need to have good relationships with the United States. So they were looking to good relationships because of economic reasons. Reversing Obama's policies. Because Obama had worked around and outside of the Congress for many of his initiatives. Remember, he had gone around outside of the Congress to get some of his things done. So a lot of them were very easily reversed by Trump because Congress hadn't really had been involved in some of Obama's dealings. So among them were the Iran nuclear deal and Obama's normalization of relationships with Cuba, which Trump believed appeased the dictatorships without concessions. So he said, this, dealing with Iran here, and there's no concessions, and we're just giving them money to support their nuclear deal. Trump's thinking this is not good. And on the same with Cuba. So he expressed new negotiations and made clear that the United States would no longer make concessions that did not reciprocate for the United States. So we're not going to do something that's not going to help us, the United States, or it's not going to be good for us, or it's not going to be a righteous cause, So he looked at it totally differently. So here we can see Trump rolls back Obama's climate policy, which he did that too with the climate change and everything. He rolled that back and said, this is not a good policy. Went on through a lot of different Obama's policies. Russia. In 2016, the primary election, hackers exposed the Democratic National Committee, or Democrats were thinking, duplicity of favoring one candidate over the other. So now they're looking, man, they were charging Trump for this for impeachment and stuff, but you know what? The Democrats were, there were some things going on here too. The investigation of the DNC led to the discovery that hackers also had ties to the Russian government. So they had ties to the Russian government. When they said, remember that President Trump was using the Russian government and found out that he wasn't. Well, anyway, Democrats accused Trump of having colluded with Russia for an electoral advantage before. In response, Congress passed stringent sanctions on this. But in spite of this, the Democrats still accused Trump of colluding with Russia, partly because he refused to publicly condemn Russia during a joint press conference with Russian President Putin in 2018. They said, well, President Trump did not, condemn Putin on anything. And he said, well, why should I do that? So anyway, basically they were saying that, he was in cahoots, so the investigation determined in March 2019 that Trump's campaign did not collude with Russia to swing the election. They did not. So why did they impeach him? That was the big thing. Dealings with Russia. North Korea. Excuse me here. There we go. So my phone was coming up. It was clear North Korea that past agreements with North Korea had failed, making the communist dictatorship of North Korea a nuclear threat. North Korea had nuclear weapons. So in 2017, President Trump warned that threats by North Korea would be met with fire and fury like the world had never seen. Him saying that, they're looking like, oh, what are you doing now? In a speech to the United Nations the next month, Trump condemned the dictator of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, because of his launch of numerous rockets that had threatened world peace. So Trump just said what he's saying. He's threatening world peace. He called him Rocket Man, in fact. So international experts and Democrats accused Trump of antagonizing a dangerous enemy. But Trump said he would be willing to work for peace with Kim Jong-un if the circumstances seemed appropriate. So Trump said, yeah, I'll go talk to him and we'll get this down and everything if the circumstance. And because he had said, if you start firing those, you're going to meet with an ugly fire, be met with the fire and fury like the world has never seen, he said. So now we have, Trump going against, North Korea. So Trump meets with Kim Jong-un. And so in 2018, Kim Jong-un took a softer tone in stating interest in have a peace treaty to officially end the Korean War, he said. He offered to meet with President Trump, leading to the first summit between a United States president and a North Korean dictator, which took place in Singapore in June of 2018. This gave hope for peace and denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. So in 2019, President Trump met a second time with Kim Jong-un in Vietnam. However, the summit ended abruptly and no agreement was ever reached. But later that year, Trump met again with Kim Jong-un and became the first sitting president to enter North Korea. So here we have pictures. So you can see this ongoing thing with Trump, meeting with him 3 times, so you can imagine. War on terror. Trump strengthened the United States fight against ISIS and against the Taliban in Afghanistan. In October of 2017, ISIS had lost its capital of Raqqa and held no territory. And so President Trump removed the U.S. support of anti-Assad rebels in the Syrian civil war, believing American involvement to be unnecessary and doubting the rebels who had ties to Islamic terrorism, which were much better than the Assad regime. Nonetheless, Trump ordered the bombing of Syria when the Assad regime crossed Obama's red line and used chemical weapons in his own country. Trump continued to back a fierce stance against terrorism when the United States killed ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in October of 2019, and the terrorist sponsoring Iranian general Qasem Soleimani in July of 2020. So, major things. Here he goes. These 2 terrorists are killed during this time, and he says, no, you're not going to use chemical. We're not going to cross that red line. And then he also did not give support even to the Assad rebels, thinking they're just taking our weapons and using it. So he was not going to make 2 wrongs a right? So here we have Trump's war on terror. Israel. This is my last bit. So Israel, because of the terrorist threats from the Palestinians in the Israeli capital of Jerusalem, the United States Embassy had always been in Tel Aviv. Each president that came in would say, we're going to move the embassy to Jerusalem and recognize it as capital, but they never did. All the way back, to Carter even, I don't know if it was that far apart. We know Bush, through Clinton, through Bush, through the second Bush, through Obama, all the way through, they had said they were going to do this and they didn't. So most of the world recognized Jerusalem as being divided, with Israel possessing the western side and Palestinians claiming the eastern side, eastern Jerusalem. In 1995, Congress had passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act, which officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital and provided for the eventual move of the United States Embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. This had been delayed for 6-month intervals, which again, Clinton, Bush, and Obama all did repeatedly, violating campaign promises to Israel, saying we're going to do this, but they didn't do it. And then Trump promised to move the embassy to Jerusalem. He says, hey, you guys didn't do this, I'm going to do it. And so he does. And he fulfilled that promise in May of 2018 when the new U.S. Embassy opened in the city of David, Jerusalem. And of course, Israel, they cheered, making Trump a hero in this. There he's his picture of him meeting with Netanyahu. Here we have down here, it says Trump make Israel great again. And we have Trump. Here we have him looking over Jerusalem, and here they even put him on the shekel, saying, oh, so he becomes like this modern day Cyrus as he recognizes Jerusalem, the cup of trembling, Jerusalem in the Bible too, as the capital, and recognizing and moving our embassy there to support Israel. How amazing. So, in this short time, God did amazing things, so maybe that is true that Trump, is a brand new Christian standing in the foundation of what he thought was right and what God has given him and using him to do. Amazing, huh? So let's stop there.